Good morning, everybody. I am not Mark. Funny story though. I was in the office, kind of getting ready for this morning, and Jeannie, Mark's wife, walked into the office, and she thought I was him. That could have got awkward really fast. But I'm not Mark. I guess we resemble each other a little bit. But my name is Chris. I'm one of the pastors here at Stonebrooke. Mark will be back with us in a couple weeks. He's actually taking a little bit of a sabbatical from speaking, but he is working on a lot of stuff for Stonebrooke that's going to help it make us better and kind of propel us into where we want to be as a mission. He's working on a lot of system stuff and texting and messaging late at night. So that's been fun too. But he's really gotten us some good stuff that's going to really help us with our mission and all that kind of stuff. So we're pretty excited about that. It's stuff that's been in his head for like 5 or 10, 30 years that he's just now getting down on paper. And it looks cool too. Like if you're into flow charts and stuff, it looks really cool. So I'm going to talk to us this morning. We're kind of keeping it real, kind of going along with the last couple messages that Joe presented. And I'm going to take a little bit different approach and direction that we're going. Joe did a really good job talking about us and kind of fixing some of ourselves and understanding ourselves a little bit better in our condition and maybe how we form thoughts and different things that kind of shape who we are. And this morning I'm going to talk about how we interact with each other. So before I go too much further, I want to say we tend to use the time in the summertime to speak to Jesus followers or Christians, people that identify as a Christian. And there's some really good stuff that's in here that'll be practical for everybody that talks to other humans. Does anybody not talk to humans through the week? Okay, well, it'll be good for you then. But we're going to look at some stuff. I don't know that I'll actually sit down, but if you guys start throwing things at me, I might hide behind that chair. So if you look like you're going to stab me, I may go backstage and finish. So we'll see how that goes. But I want to really dig into, so the last, 6 or 7 years of the last 10 years, I've been a human resources business partner for a large corporation. Very exciting for me. I finished my master's degree in human resources in 9 weeks. I'm really pumped about that. Don't need applause, but it's been an interesting journey finishing that degree. But I really like studying and looking at and changing some minds on things in regard to how we interact with each other. And I really like people watching. Does anybody else like people watching? Oh, it's a good time, especially for introverts. But so we're going to get into this thing. I want to start off with a scripture in 3 John 2. Has anybody ever seen this scripture? Beloved, I pray above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. Has anybody ever heard a church use this passage? Nobody? I went to a church for 25 or 30 years. This was our foundational scripture. This is what we focused on as a people. But we always focused on that first part where it's that you prosper and be in health. And everything, we even said weird things to each other in the service and kind of like a liturgical manner where we turn to each other and repeat this to each other. And we said some other things that was really awkward, especially if you're an introvert like I am. It was really awkward. But I want to focus on that last half about just as your soul prospers. Does anybody know what soul prosperity is? Baffled me for years because we always focus on that first part, but I want to focus on the second part. Soul prosperity is where we are learning. It kind of challenges our intellect, how we grow, and our emotions, how we develop and grow emotionally as people. So it's really important that we know that in order to get that other stuff, we also need to make sure that our knowledge and our emotions and all that kind of stuff that make us who we are all prospering at the same level. So we're going to have a little soul prosperity this morning. Is that cool? Is it cool we keep it real? Man, you guys are quiet this morning. Well, I think in order to get to where we're going, it's really difficult to get there without talking about some of the things that irk us. So I want to spend a few minutes about, well, that's awful small. Maybe that's good. There's good. It's all over to the left. You guys are jacking with my OCD, aren't you? Either way, so I talk about things that irk you, OCD. There's lots of things in this building that really play into that. Do you guys remember before we had that incident with the balloon when we were in the Ark? Anybody remember that? Oh, man, that really drove me nuts. But instead of asking things, each one of you guys to talk about something that irks you, I want to talk about some things that irk me. Maybe you guys can relate, or you can think about some of the things that irk you. So one thing that really drives me crazy, see if anybody's here with me, is driving. Does anybody have a bad interaction with people while you're driving? Like maybe you turn into a different human being when you're driving? Just me? So anyway, a few months ago, I can say all this because Zachary got sick this morning, so they left. But if you want to check any of this stuff out and validate it, you can ask Rachel. But a few months ago, I was driving down the road. We were coming back from Lake of the Ozarks, and I had the whole family in the car. And has anybody ever been to Lake of the Ozarks? Kind of some windy roads, right? So we come down. I think we were about the beginning of T Highway, maybe out there on BB or something. And I'm cruising along in my car at the normal 5 to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. You know, that legal gray area that we have there. And I pull up on a car that's driving 15 to 20 miles under the speed limit. Anybody ever done that? They speed up on the straightaways. They slow way down on the curves. You can't get around them. So we pull up. We did that for about 2 or 3 miles. And then the blinker comes on. They're getting ready to make a right turn. And they take 3 miles to slow down right before they get into that driveway. And then they take about 45 minutes to pull it off the road. Anybody ever? Am I alone with this? Never happened to anybody else? So I'm compelled. I have to. I lay on the horn as I'm driving by. And I'm yelling like they can hear me because they can't hear me over the horn. And I'm like, pull it off the road, you jackwagon. Anybody ever do that? Nobody? And then you get just a little bit past them and you see it's like a 90-year-old person and you feel a little bad. So going back to like Joe was talking about conditioning, right? How we condition, and some of the things are kind of environmental. Maybe you learn some things at home culturally. So a couple of weeks later, we're driving down the same road, and my prefrontal cortex is in a little better mood that day. So pull up, and we're just kind of following this person that's driving a little slow. They do the same kind of thing. It's a different person. And I hear from the back seat, get it off the road, you jackwagon. It's my 5-year-old. And then I'm like, oh, my goodness. And so he proceeds, that guy's a jackwagon, isn't he, Daddy? I'm like, no, we don't use the word jackwagon. So he's like, but you did. I'm like, right, yes. And so trying to have that conversation with a 5-year-old wasn't so good. Anybody ever go through a drive-through restaurant and they jack up your order? Yesterday? How'd you handle that? I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't handle that so well. Like if I get through the drive-through, one of the things really irks me, you pull up to the drive-through, you know they got that one now where it gives you a little pre-recorded message, order when ready. So as soon as they get done saying order when ready, I start ordering. And dead silence after I'm done ordering. And then the little 16, 17-year-old kid comes on and says, yeah, I can take your order now. I'm like, I already ordered. The thing told me to order, so I did. Well, can you say it again? I guess so. So you get up there, you pay, you go up to the next window, and then you get home and you open the bag and you're like, oh, man. Do you ever get home and like you're like, oh, man. So you drive back to the store. You pull up in front of the store. You slam your car and park, probably hurting your transmission a little bit. You go inside to ask for the manager, and then that 17-year-old kid comes up. He's the manager, and you're like, oh. And you just can't stop yourself, so you just go ahead and go with it. And you end up leaving the conversation with something like, well, you know what? Next time I come back, I'll just order $20 worth of stuff. That's way when I get home, I won't be disappointed. I won't know what's in the bag. Just give me the $20 bag. We'll call it good. Does anybody know what I drive? I do not have a Stonebrooke bumper sticker on my car. for that reason. So a little bit of fun. And those are real things. I really struggle with some of the stuff that we're going to talk about this morning, but I think the way we interact people, we're going to go a little bit deeper in kind of how we interact with each other, and I'm going to use the word social media. Is that okay? Well, it is 2 words. It's kind of hyphenated. Social media, maybe? Is it 1 word? I don't know. So, are you guys okay with that? We talk about kind of the way we interact with each other? Social media? So, I've seen lots of people, you know, you get into we got a lot of trigger words right now, right? We got fake news, we got ACA. Anybody want to talk about ACA? I'm doing one of the things you're never supposed to do in church and talk about politics. Trump, trigger word. Hillary, trigger word. I can comfortably stand here and tell you that I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I've always kind of voted for the best person to do the job. But I do a little research, I pray, and I vote for the best person. That's not a perfect person, but usually the best person, in my opinion. But we get on, I'm kind of noticing a trend. Anybody got that friend on Facebook that maybe it starts with something, and then they come out, they're the most dramatic human you know. Like, they're the most dramatic human being on the planet, and they post, "I'm tired of all the drama." I hate the drama. You guys are laughing because we all got that friend on Facebook. Work. Yeah, maybe it's live. I don't know. I didn't know people still interacted with people face to face, but yeah, maybe live. You got that person. I just hate the drama. I'm so tired of it. So you're compelled by whatever inside you talks to that person and to tell them they are the most dramatic human on your friends list. And then it doesn't go so well, you know, maybe. Or maybe we get on there and we're posting. I'm going to try not to get too into specifics about any kind of topic, but maybe we get in there and we're talking about, let me tell you about one that I actually got into a few weeks ago. Again, I'm working on this stuff. I don't have it down yet. It's a work in progress, I suppose. But some friends of mine, I say friends, they're kind of acquaintances that I used to work with, and they were having a conversation about how the government's going to fix the healthcare problem, which baffles me anyway that lay people will have that conversation, but by all means have it. And so I had seen it, and let me help you guys with just a little something on Facebook. There's this new feature on there, like if you don't like something, like you can actually just like scroll. Do you see that? You just scroll right past it. Did you know that was a thing? So I get on there, and I'd seen this post, and I was like, I'm not getting into that. I have some opinions. I have lots of opinions about stuff. If you ever want to know what they are, come ask me personally, I'll tell you. But I chose not to get involved in this conversation, and so one of my previous coworkers, really far right person, the other one's real far left person, and it just baffles me that they have that conversation with each other on Facebook anyway. But one of them decided that I needed to be involved in that conversation, so they tagged me in it. And so I'm reading through. I mean, they went on for a long time, and I'm reading through, and this one guy, he was one of the managers over the appliance department where I used to work, and he had posted something in regard to the fact that he wanted to know how the sausage was made. Trigger word, sausage made, that's what we're talking about right now. So he wanted to know how Trump was going to fix the details on how Trump was going to fix the healthcare system. So I had seen this person. I've been in retail leadership for, 25 years or so in different capacities, but my undergrad degree is in business administration, but and a lot of that deals with financial statements and different accounting stuff. Looking over a financial statement, I'm very comfortable with. This person had a master's degree in music education and wasn't very familiar with a lot of accounting stuff. So he got on there and he's wanting to know the details about how the numbers, he wanted to know how they were going to work out. And so I had seen this guy work through his financial statement for his department, we used to call them vital stats. So for a week, you'd get a report, and it'd show you things you were up and down in and made some suggestions on how you could make improvements on different areas. Well, he used to stare at that thing in the weekly staff meeting like a monkey trying to figure out a math problem. Seriously. So he's post after post after post wanting to know the details. And so I finally said, I'm like, man, I've seen you try and figure out vital stats, but if you want to know how the government is going to fix the macroeconomic plan for healthcare, by all means, you should have that. Well, that started, it had nothing to do with the information, right? I was trying to jab him. And I did. And we went on and on and on and on and on and on. And the conversation ended with snowflake, deplorable, unfriend, block. You know, all that stuff happened in that conversation. And I ended up calling the guy. I was like, man, listen, I know there was people watching. I kind of got brought into this thing that I tried to stay out of. And I apologized to him. But I see this a lot. So a lot of people have different opinions about different things. Maybe they'll post something online and you disagree with it, like you're passionate about it, but you don't have a relationship with that person, or the relationship's not good. Maybe it's not a close relationship. And so we're going to look at a few things that the Bible tells us, that Jesus tells us about how to handle certain things like that and kind of where things go. So the first thing that I want to look at, I told you guys I was an HR manager, right? HR business partner. I want to look at, this is what I refer to as HR math. So we can put that next, don't put that up. There you go, leave that one up there. We won't go through the whole, go to the next one. So this is what I call HR math. And so some of this will come into play as we go along through some of the scriptures and looking at what Jesus said. But trust, in my opinion, is one of the most key components to having a relationship with somebody. If I would have asked you what is the key component, a lot of you probably would have said love, faith, faithfulness, all that kind of stuff. Yes, it's all compiled, in my opinion, into trust. So the first part of trust is credibility, and I've used this here at Stonebrooke in different meetings at different times, but I want to go a little deeper in what the trust equation looks like. So credibility relates to our words and is revealed in our credentials and our honesty. In my mind, there's several things that that can't be taken away from you. It's kind of like your integrity, your credibility, reliability, your level of intimacy. Those things can't be taken away, but you can give them away. So let's say like somebody really looks up to you and you're, in their mind, a very credible person, and you go and you're slamming somebody on Facebook in a very unloving manner, and then a couple weeks go by and you're trying to talk to them about Jesus and coming to your church because your church is all about love and welcoming everybody, and they're thinking in their mind, yeah, but 2 weeks ago, you was just killing somebody on Facebook. I saw that. I mean, I didn't comment on it or like it or anything. So maybe your church and that Jesus thing that you're trying to tell me about, maybe it's not for real. So here a little bit later, I want to suggest some ways to maybe apply some filters to some of the conversations that we have to people. Reliability deals with our actions. So do you do the things that you say you're going to do? If I stood up here and told everybody I'm going to get the checkbook out, we're going to write everybody a check for $500, and you get all excited, and I'm like, I'm just kidding, because I am, and we leave, you know, my credibility, and now I'm not reliable because I didn't do the things that I say I was going to do. In this equation, one of the biggest parts of it, in my mind, is intimacy. And I've done a presentation that revolves around leadership several times using this. And usually when I say the word intimacy, even with grown human people, I usually get a little giggle. So go ahead and giggle. Oh, we got a couple. So intimacy deals with our emotions. And in order to have a relationship with people, I think a lot of times we have to make sure we're keeping our emotions in check. It's not easy to do. I'm not saying that I'm good at it. I think science tells us that the prefrontal cortex of our brain deals with rationale and our emotions, and that's not fully developed until, I guess they're saying, like in your mid to late 20s now. I think science is wrong. I'm 41, almost 42. I ain't got it down yet. I still make some bad emotional decisions, but I try not to. And then we're going to talk a little bit about self-orientation. That relates to how we're caring, our caring level. Like if we're looking at an issue that we're debating back and forth, how much weight do I give on my opinion versus what the value of yours is? Do I care what your opinion is? So we're going to go through some scriptures, and I really want to apply this as kind of a filter with some things we're going to look at. Is that cool? So one of the things I just wanted to show is, and I've said this all the time, like I've got a lot of sayings. My family gets tired of me saying them. One of them is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Has anybody ever seen that? I think a lot of the things that we're even experiencing today have always happened. The vehicle may be different. You know, they didn't have Facebook back in the turn of the century there, or the first century Christian church. There was no Facebook. And I even think sometimes when I'm reading through the gospel, with the exception of Luke, I was corrected one time when I was talking to Mark. Luke did a lot of research. But for the Gospels, a lot of those, if you even think about it like this, those guys followed Jesus around, and they wrote about him. They're like bloggers. So when you're reading through some of the Gospels, if you read them kind of like blogs, maybe that will help you a little bit. It kind of helps me. They're just following Jesus around and writing down the stuff that he did and said, right? So this first round, the more things change, the more they say the same. Boy, that is really small. I even wore my glasses today to try and do that. I'm going to read it this way. Then they brought him a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute. And Jesus healed him so that he could both talk and see. All the people were astonished and said, could this be the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, it's only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that this fellow, I didn't know they used the word fellow, drives out demons. So, anybody see anything there? I said that's fake news. Right? That's not who Jesus was. So, let's go on to the next one. And one thing, you talk about, there's nothing new under the sun. Several times, this is just kind of funny to me. When I'm reading through some of the Gospels and I apply them to things that maybe are happening today, you can see a lot of similarities. So several times after Jesus performed miracles, he would tell the person that received the miracle, hey, don't tell anybody. And you know what they always did? They went and told people. We've had leakers since Jesus was around, right? There's nothing new. It's not new stuff. So let's go. So Jesus said, this is kind of what led me to really start thinking about everything. So this whole message that I'm giving this morning is, I've had this person in my life that's been in some sort of a relationship since I was 12 or 13 years old. That I looked up them as a mentor. I worked for her for some time. And I've had this discussion with Mark several times about, do I have to love that person? Yes, you have to love them. Do I have to forgive them? Yes, you have to forgive them. I'm still working on the reconciling part. I don't know if I'm required to do that or not. But one of the things so I'm asked Mark about some of these things, and he's like, yeah, you got to do that. So one of the thoughts that's always come through my head was, well, Jesus didn't love the Pharisees or the teachers of the law. He was mean to them all the time. So we're going to look at that in just a little bit. But he called them a brood of vipers. Now, he called them lots of names through the New Testament, anytime he interacted with them. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why. I've come to the conclusion, I've read several articles. We follow a guy, a lot of us do here at Stonebrooke, called Greg Boyd, and he wrote an article about this, or a blog about this specific thing. Did Jesus love the disciples? I believe that he did. I think that Jesus knew that there was nothing he could say or do to change the way they thought about things were. You have to remember, for hundreds of years, they thought the Messiah, or the one that was coming back to deliver them from Egypt or slavery, was going to come on a horse with a sword, and he was going to kill all those people and establish a government kingdom for the Jews. So they weren't the person that they thought he was going to be, and they didn't believe anything he said. I look at a lot of the stuff that Jesus said and did, because he said, I mean, I'm with Mark a lot of times, if the guy predicts his own death and resurrection and does it, that's some credibility for me, right? We looked at credibility and reliability. He said he was going to do it. He did it. That's pretty reliable to me. I think a lot of the things that Jesus did through his ministry while he was on the earth was tried to connect the dots for people and really move us into going, I'm not what they've been telling you for a long time. So when the Pharisees called him Beelzebub, or he was a prince of demons or whatever, they did that in public. And, there was hundreds, maybe thousands of people in that group, and they were listening to these people say those things. And have you ever played telephone when you were little? Because they didn't have microphones. So I envision like thousands of multitude of people, and Jesus sitting, because he sat a lot when he spoke, and, a small group around him. And I imagine like the Pharisees would say something, and then the people behind them would turn around and play telephone all the way back to the thousands, right? Well, that message was probably misunderstood. But I think a lot of the way Jesus treated the Pharisees and the rulers or the teachers of the law is he was kind of showing them a mirror of how they acted. They were hypocrites because all the 613 laws of Moses, they weren't doing them, but they sure expected everybody else to, right? So I think he was showing, in my mind, he loved them. It was tough love. He was showing them a mirror of how they treated people and telling them that it wasn't wrong, it wasn't right. They weren't going to listen to anything he had to say in a loving manner. I think he applied some tough love here. So let's go on to the next one. How can you who are evil say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. I think we're going to get into this scripture a little bit deeper. Let's go on to the next one. Some Pharisees, yes, this is a parable of the unclean versus the clean, and so we're gonna kind of, I'm gonna try and read through this without commenting on it. We'll see if that's possible. Some Pharisees and teachers of religious law now arrived from Jerusalem to see Jesus. They asked him, "Why do your disciples disobey our age-old religion? For they ignore our tradition of ceremonial hand-washing before they eat." Jesus replied, "And why do you, by your traditions, violate the direct commandments of God? For instance, God says, 'Honor your father and mother,' and anyone who speaks disrespectfully of father or mother must be put to death." Glad that rule wasn't around when I was a kid. But you say it is all right for people to say to their parents, "Sorry, I can't help you, for I have vowed to give God what I would have given to you." Let's shoot forward. I think it's verse 12. Can we get to 12? So then the disciples came. So here was the issue. I'm not going to read through all that. The issue was Jesus and the disciples were getting ready to eat. They didn't wash their hands. So there was a little bit of an exchange back and forth about them not following the law that they are expecting everybody else to. Then the disciples came to him and asked, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this?" This kind of makes me funny. He replied, "Every plant that my heavenly Father planted will be pulled up by the roots." I don't know what that meant back then, but I'm thinking he's like, I don't care. So I think we go forward. I think that's Jesus like, oh, they didn't like that. Well, scroll past that one. So he says, "Leave them. They are blind guides. If a blind man leads a blind man, both will fall into a pit." And then Peter says, "Explain the parable to us." Does anybody like sometimes that Jesus got frustrated with the disciples? Now, he loved them, but I think, and we're going to get somewhere with this, I think there's a time and a place to be tough with somebody. I don't think it's putting them on blast on Facebook. That's my opinion. I mean, blast on, but we're going to look a little bit later about what we're supposed to do when we have a problem with somebody. Are you still so dull? Well, that makes you want to ask some more questions, don't it? Jesus asked them, and let's go on to the next one. Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? Now, aren't you glad that Jesus wasn't a little bit more descriptive with this? This could have been known as the parable of the poo, if he was a little bit more descriptive. Let's go on to the next one. But the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these things make a man unclean. Is there more after that one? For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, and slander. These are what make a man unclean, but eating with unwashed hands does not make them unclean. Is that the end of that one? Okay, let's not go on yet. So I think using this as, well, maybe I should be a little bit more responsible with the things that come out of my mouth. I think a lot of times, you've heard people, maybe preachers in the past, if you've been to church before, preach that the tongue is like a two-edged sword. You can bring life or put to death just by words that come out of your mouth. Let me look at my notes real quick because I don't want to get too far off. Oh, let's go ahead and look at the next slide. This is Jesus telling us what we're supposed to do when we either had a disagreement with somebody or somebody's wronged us. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault just between the two of you. Anybody ever wronged you on Facebook? Yeah, just one of us. Anybody ever been wronged? Anybody ever been profiled? Come on, let's talk. Let's keep it real. I've been profiled. Let me tell you a story, and then we'll get on to some more scriptures. But I was much younger. I'll say I got over this, thank goodness. But I joke with my family every once in a while about me being in prison, because I was imprisoned at some point. It's based on definition. I wasn't free to go yet, So we were driving through. I used to run Walmart stores in the Metro D.C. area and in the Chicago area. Well, we had just relocated from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, and we were looking for a house, someplace to lay our head in the evening. Because if you're a manager for Walmart, you're not home. You work about 80 or 90 hours a week. So, we did back then. But we're driving through this neighborhood that we were recommended to go drive through. And I quickly, we didn't have any kids at the time, but I quickly looked over at Rachel because I think we're in the wrong neighborhood. So we're driving through, and I'm looking in the driveway. It's a really nice place. And there's Mercedes, there was a Maserati, Lexus, BMW. Name the luxury car, it was in somebody's driveway. So we cruising around in our Ford Escort ZX2. And we were driving. I just made a right turn. We're driving down this road, and I was passing a cop that was coming the other way. And as soon as I passed him, he flipped around and started following me. Well, we're driving down the road for a little while, and he getting pretty close. I'm thinking probably needed glasses. Couldn't see my license plate. He's running the license plate. And I'm like, man, I got to get out of this dude's way. So we come to the end of the road. It's a cul-de-sac. I didn't know it was a cul-de-sac when we pulled in there. And I pull straight off the cul-de-sac into a driveway. And here come the lights. Pew! And everybody, if you can picture like suburban America at its finest, everybody's out trimming their bushes. They got the aprons on. Everybody's clean. There's tons of people outside working in the yard, and the cop comes up to my window. He's like, you know why I pulled you over? I'm like, no, sir. Now, understand this. My brother's a police officer. He's my older brother, 22 months older than me, down in Savannah, Georgia, Richmond Hill. Anybody ever been to Fort Stewart, that area there? If you ever need a hookup with a police officer, let me know if you ever go down there. But so I thought, I used to beat up my brother all the time. So I could handle this guy. it wasn't the case. So I go, no, I really don't know why you pulled me over. He goes, well, you failed to signal when you left the road. I said, well, that's funny. I pulled straight into the driveway. Which way did you want me to signal? Now, the relationship was already strained at this point. You know what I mean? And so he says, I don't know, but when you leave the highway, you got to turn on a turn signal. I said, so it didn't matter which one I turned on as long as I turned it on. Yes. Okay. So we move on, and we're talking, and I've already got an attitude with this guy. And he takes my driver's license, and he goes back, and he comes back up to the car. We had just moved there, I'd say 90 days or something. Maybe it had to be a little bit longer than 90 days, because you are required in the state of Illinois to change your driver's license before the 90-day mark there, or it's a bad deal for you. So he comes back, and he says, you're under arrest. You have an invalid driver's license. I said, well, my driver's license is still good. I'm starting my argument with this guy. And then he says something else. I called him a liar at one point. That's when I found myself outside of my car in handcuffs. And then he said something about, and it's been several years ago, he said something about an I-bond, which I guess was a new thing back then, never heard of it. So I asked him, I was like, well, what's an I-bond? He goes, well, you give me $100 today, and we let you go. And I'm like, so you want me to bribe you? Because I'm down for that, no ticket. And the next thing I know, we're on our way to the police station. I'm yelling all kinds of stuff about donuts and real crime. And I get there, and I didn't shut up. You can ask Rachel. Rachel's crying. While they're putting me in the police car, I'm screaming police brutality and all kinds of stuff. I wasn't behaving the way I should be, you know what I mean? So I get to the police station. They handcuffed me to a bench because I was this violent criminal. They handcuffed me to a bench, and I'm still, the whole time, doors closed, I'm yelling. That thing was not, it's still not developed. I still have problems. And a few minutes later, my wife comes in, or the police officer comes in and hands me my cell phone. And I get on there, and I'm like, what? And it's my brother in Savannah. He's like, shut up. I just handed it back to him. I don't know, about 30 or 40 minutes later, I was on my way. The funny thing is, I got out of now I had to go retake my driving test. Have you ever done that when you've been driving for a while? Yeah, that's fun. But I got out of the ticket for that one, and I ended up settling on a ticket for the turn signal thing, which I still say, which one was I supposed to put on? So let's look at this. If your brother sins against you, go and show him your fault just between the two of you. Don't blast it on Facebook. If he listens to you, you've won your brother over. But if he will not listen, take 2 or 3 others along so that every matter can be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. I think, in my opinion, if you've got a problem with somebody, if you disagree with somebody, don't just follow this as a rule. Go have a conversation with somebody. I have learned more. Remember I said I like sayings? One of the things that I've said a lot of is if you're the one that's always doing the talking in any situation, you're not learning anything new. So if you go sit down with somebody that maybe has a different opinion, now I do think you can have a paradigm shift while you're speaking. Like you go, oh, well, that means something completely different than I used to, but you can't really learn anything new. If you have a disagreement with somebody, go sit down with them. It could be over anything political, healthcare. Hey, maybe 2 or 3 of us get together. We figure out how to fix healthcare. No, that's probably not going to happen. But whatever the issue is, go talk to somebody. Joe and I don't know where he went. You guys know Joe, plays guitar. Man, that solo was good this morning, wasn't it? Joe and I, when we first became friends, disagreed about a lot of things socially. We had several conversations through Facebook Messenger. There was times I would sit down with him and I'd be like, hey, why do you think this? And I didn't always come to into being in agreement with him, but I understood where he stood on different things. Just from having conversation with him. And I love Joe. I mean, who can't love Joe, right? But I think it's in the conversation. We even say here, like, we don't have a policy manual. I guess Mark's working on some things, like job descriptions and stuff this week. But we don't have a policy manual on a lot of things because we really do believe that conversation and relationship trump policy and procedure any day of the week. And so if you have a relationship with somebody, you've worked with somebody, you've built up some trust with them, I think at that point it gives you the right to speak into something that maybe they're doing, maybe something that they're posting. I don't know if he minds me sharing, but Joe posted something. I don't remember what it was. Do you? I don't know, last week or something. And I just sent him a text message. He didn't intend it this way at all, but I just knew. He posted it, and I was like, oh, man. Agitation propaganda. Has anybody ever seen that stuff, that word? So I texted Joe. I was like, "Ag-prop much?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." So, but anyway, sometimes I even like getting in there looking at the arguments. But here's something that I would ask you to consider. Man, I'm running out of time. Do you have a relationship with that person before you post? Does anybody know my wife, Rachel? Most of you guys, she sings up here sometimes. She will. It's funny, like she'll be like, we can be having chicken for dinner, and she will take 2.5 hours to develop that post before she hits the post button. It drives me insane. I'm like, just post it, we're having chicken. But let's skip up. I'm trying to save some time here. Maybe I shouldn't have told that last story. But I was in prison once, so I don't mind going back. We did clean or unclean, what Jesus said about forgiving your brother. Let's go on just a little bit. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. If he refuses to listen to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Now, I wanted to put the yellow on the word you there at the end of it. I think when Jesus is talking to these people, he's probably stooping again. You know, Mark talks a lot about God and Jesus stooping for us. I think he's talking about the fact about how that culture of that time would talk to a pagan or a tax collector. However, maybe we can look at it differently. How did Jesus treat pagans or tax collectors? He loved them, right? They were human. Those are the people he gravitated towards. He didn't care if those religious people were tailing him. Let's go on a little bit. Just a thought. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 70 times? Or 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Now, they haven't jacked my order up at the drive-thru 77 times yet, but I don't know what happens at 78. So we'll have to go from there. Let's go on to the next one. This is something that I think we can look at differently. I think in those times when greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends, that might have actually meant physically then, but I think a lot of times when you see your friends post on Facebook and you don't agree with that, I think this could actually apply to maybe you give way and you're laying what you believe down to try and better understand why they believe the way that they do. There's lots of things when you look at what Joe talked about, our condition and things that we're developed in and how we get to the thought processes that we have today. There's a lot of things that play into that. But I think grace, when somebody's doing something that plays into, instead of being compelled to fix it, maybe you can send them a message, hey, can we talk about that sometimes? I'll buy the beer, you bring the pizza, we'll have a great conversation, and we'll just discuss this. There's a suggestion. So look at the next one. I'm going to try and it says we got 4 minutes left. Love the Lord your God. Oh, how many of you guys got teenagers? If you ever ask them, like maybe you've had this conversation, Mom and I are going to go out. You can stay here. You can play Xbox, but I want you to get the dishes done, the trash taken out, and get your room cleaned up. And you come home, the kids, the 13-year-old, playing the Xbox, and you go in there and you're like, I asked you to do 3 things. Not one of them's done. I think that if we're not careful, that could be Jesus when he comes back. Like, I asked you to do 3 things. Go tell people about me, love God, love people. It's real easy. Y'all didn't do it. So I think we've got some way to go in there. There's lots of ways to do that. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this: love the neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So, the disciples were talking with Jesus, and they asked him, of the 10 commandments, there's 613, including the top 10. Which one's the one we got to follow the most? This is what Jesus said. So don't shoot me. Don't shoot Jesus either. Let's look at what love is. Has anybody ever heard of the love confession? The church that I went to, we used to say it to each other all the time. So this is in Corinthians. This is what love is. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Anybody struggle with any of that stuff besides me? Thank you. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Yeah, anybody out there holding a grudge? Maybe you should let that go. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. If you get out of here, and I told you guys earlier I used to be in retail management for a long time. You know what the worst crowd of the week was? Yeah, that Sunday crowd about 12:30 when all the churches got out. You knew you were going to have a bunch of grumpy people because they was at church that got smacked around a little bit about being bad all week. Not trying to do that today. I just want to filter it, hopefully bring some stuff that maybe we can filter some of the way we interact with each other. I'm not saying don't be real. I'm not saying that you can't have some tough conversations. I think where we have them, how we have them, and do you love that person you're getting ready to have a tough conversation with is a huge filter. And if you can't answer yes to those questions, I say leave it alone. Scroll on. It's none of your business. Now, somebody tags you in that post. I'm just kidding. But that's kind of, boy, if I could talk for 1 minute and 6 seconds, we'll wrap this thing up. So that's it for today. I think we're going to look at some other things next week that kind of relate to a more positive approach to this. But I don't think you can really talk about how we interact with people unless we talk about some of that negative stuff and point some things out. So be kind to people on Facebook this week. If you need to tweet something, tweet. You can tweet love, 1 Corinthians, what love is. If you feel compelled to tweet anything, tweet something nice this week. Here's something that I just want to, I'm not going to drop all of it, Joe. I won't do it. But we are getting ready to unleash on our community. When we relaunch, we've got something we're going to do that's going to unleash love on our community. And I want everybody that's here, that's listening to today, to be able to put that bumper sticker on the back of your car without any fear of losing credibility. Because if you put that on the back of your car and you're flipping off that person that just cut you off, and you got "I love Jesus" on the back of the car, do I need to even describe that anymore? So we're gonna do. When we relaunch, we've got something we're gonna do for our community that's just gonna pour love out on our community. And it's going to come with a bumper sticker. Are you guys excited about that? Some bumper stickers? Now, I'm one of those people that believes you got to earn the right to put that bumper sticker on your car. So between now and our relaunch, be practicing this stuff because it's going to be big. It's going to be a good time. Some other communities have done what we're going to do, and the pour out in the community is just incredible. So if today was your first day, please come back. It's not like this every Sunday. We always have a good time. It was really nice to see you, and I'm going to end with Joe with a thumbs up. Y'all have a great day.